On the 5th of March 1944, Jesus spoke to Maria Valtorta about the disobedience of our first parents in the Garden of Eden, and I made a separate video about that. Today I'm going to read for you from the dictation given by the Blessed Virgin Mary herself to Maria Valtorta on the 8th of March 1944. I won't read the whole dictation, I'll read part of it. Disobedience was the beginning of the downfall. "Do not eat and do not touch of that tree," said God. And man and woman did not respect that prohibition. Although as kings of creation, they were allowed to touch and eat of everything except of that tree, because God wanted them to be inferior only to the angels. The tree, the means to test their obedience. What does obedience to God's commands imply? It implies all possible good, because God commands nothing but good. What is disobedience? It is evil, because it brings about a rebellious mental state in which Satan can be active. And the Blessed Virgin continues, Eve goes toward the tree, which, if avoided, would have caused her welfare. If approached, would cause her ruin. She goes there led by the childish curiosity of seeing what is special about it, and by a rashness that makes her consider God's command a useless one, since she is strong and pure, the Queen of Eden, where everything is subject to her and nothing can hurt her. Her presumption is her ruin. Presumption is the yeast of pride. At the tree, she finds the seducer, who sings his song of lies to her inexperience, to her beautiful virginal inexperience, to her badly guarded inexperience. Now Mary quotes the devil. "You think there is evil here? No, there isn't. God told you because he wants to keep you as slaves under his power. You think you are kings and queen? You are not even as free as wild animals. Animals can love one another with true love. You cannot. Animals are granted the gift of being creators, like God. Animals generate little ones and see their families grow as much as they like. You do not. You are denied this joy. Why make you man and woman if you have to live thus? Be gods. You do not know the joy of being two in one flesh. That creates a third one, and many more. Do not believe God when he promised you the joy of posterity, seeing your children forming new families, leaving their father and mother for their families. He has given you a sham life. Real life is to know the laws of life. Then you will be like gods and will be able to say to God, we are equal to you. And so that ends the Virgin quoting Satan speaking to Eve. And the Blessed Virgin goes on. And the allurement continued. because there was no will to break it. On the contrary, there was the will to continue it and to learn what did not belong to man. And the forbidden tree becomes really mortal for the human race, because from its branches there hangs the fruit of bitter knowledge that comes from Satan. And the woman becomes a female, and with the yeast of satanic knowledge in her heart, she moves on to corrupt Adam. With their bodies and souls degraded and their morals corrupted, they became acquainted with sorrow and the death of both of their souls, deprived of grace, and of their bodies divested of immortality. And Eve's wound engendered suffering, which will not subside until the last couple on earth are dead. Blessed Virgin continues, I went along the road of the two sinners, but in the opposite direction. I obeyed. I obeyed in every way. God inspired me to be a virgin. I obeyed. When I loved virginity, that made me as pure as the first woman before she met Satan, God asked me to get married. I obeyed, elevating marriage to the degree of purity intended by God when he created the first parents. I was then convinced that my destiny was solitude in marriage and the contempt of people because of my holy sterility, when God asked me to be a mother. I obeyed. I believed that it was possible and that the word came from God, because I was filled with peace when I heard it. I did not think I deserved it. I did not say, now the world will admire me because I'm like God creating the flesh of God. No, I did not. I lowered myself in my humility. Joy gushed out of my heart like the stem of a rose, but it was soon decorated with sharp thorns, and it was clenched in the tangle of sorrow, like branches enveloped by the beer binds of convolvuli. And by the way, folks, the footnote to this book helpfully tells us that convolvuli is a genus of climbing plants, including the bindweed. Okay, to continue. Sorrow for the pain of my spouse. It suffocated my joy. Sorrow for the pain of my son. A thorn that pierced my joy. Just a pause for a moment. When Mary says, sorrow for the pain of my spouse, it suffocated my joy, she's referring to there the fact that, yes, it was a joyful thing that the angel Gabriel told her she would conceive, and that moment when she said yes, she conceived. But that means a baby is going to be growing inside her. She doesn't go and tell Joseph. As the scripture tells, she's not telling Joseph, look, an angel came to me, now I'm pregnant. It's a miracle. She was silent. The only time Joseph finds out, I think it's in St. Matthew's Gospel, is when an angel speaks to him, when he's about to put Mary away quietly, in the only way he can think of to prevent her being stoned to death. The angel says, no. Effectively, this is a miracle from God. Stick with this woman. You'll be her husband. But in that period, before Joseph knows, he's going to be seeing that her body is beginning to change. And he's going to work out that she's having a baby. And in fact, it says in elsewhere in the first volume of the poem of the Man God, Jesus, as we know, after the Annunciation, when Gabriel tells her that Saint Elizabeth is pregnant, Mary goes to see her and Saint Zechariah, and that's in Hebron. And I'll read that account one of these days, because it's wonderful how Mary's there helping Saint Elizabeth, who's very old and therefore is having a very difficult pregnancy. Mary's a rock. But to not be distracted, just to stay on the point, she comes back after 3 months. So what's going to happen? Joseph still doesn't know, but he sees Mary get off the donkey. Her body is changed because she's now 3 months pregnant. So what's happened? Any man would draw an obvious conclusion. It wasn't Joseph. They haven't consummated the marriage yet. It's not at that phase of consummation yet. So what's going on? So he's upset, but she, the Blessed Mother, is upset too, because she can't tell him. I can't remember right now whether she's instructed not to tell Joseph anything by the angel Gabriel, or whether it's an inner voice that tells the Blessed Virgin not to say anything to Joseph, to leave it to God, to wait until God does. And that's an additional burden for Mary, because she doesn't know when God is going to tell Joseph the reality. So she just has to suffer. But then, as she says, the pain of my spouse, the pain of Joseph, thinking that Mary has dishonoured him. So double pain, her own and her spouse's. And then we know when she says, sorrow for the pain of my son, a thorn that pierced my joy. Well, that is obviously because she foresees that Jesus is going to meet his death violently in an unjust way. She doesn't know the details, but she knows that's going to happen. So the Blessed Virgin continues. Eve wanted pleasure, triumph, freedom. I accepted sorrow, humiliation, slavery. I gave up my peaceful life, the esteem of my spouse, my own freedom. I kept nothing for myself. I became the maid of God in the flesh, in morals, in the spirit, relying on him not only for the virginal conception, but also for the protection of my honour, for the consolation of my spouse, for the means suitable to elevate him also to the sublimation of marriage, so that we could restore man and woman to their lost dignity. I embraced the will of the Lord for myself, my spouse, and my creature. Just to explain there, when she says her creature, obviously she means Jesus. But just to backtrack slightly. So she and Saint Joseph are to restore man and woman to their lost dignity. Therefore, the marriage of Mary and Joseph is a model marriage for the Christian, and particularly the Catholic. No matter how odd that may seem, it would seem that there can be such marriages as Mary and Joseph had. And she's praying. She prayed for Saint Joseph to be able to be the kind of spouse that he would need to be in this marriage that God had ordained. So, Mary speaks of her sorrow, humiliation and slavery. I'll continue now. I said yes for the whole 3, as I was certain that God would not break his promise to assist me in my sorrow of a spouse who realises that she is considered guilty, and a mother who knows she is generating a son to deliver him to sorrow. I said yes and nothing else. That yes cancelled Eve's no to God's command. Yes, my Lord, as you wish. I will know what you want me to know. I will live as you want me to live. I will rejoice if you wish so. I will suffer for what you want me to suffer. Yes, forever, my Lord. From the moment your ray made me a mother, to the moment you called me back to you. Yes, forever yes. All the good voices of the flesh, all the good passions of the spirit were under the weight of my perpetual yes. And above, on a diamond pedestal, there was my spirit, lacking wings to fly to you, but it was the master of the whole ego, subdued and made your servant. Servant in joy, servant in sorrow, but smile, O God, and be happy. Guilt has been defeated. It has been removed and destroyed. It lies under my heel. It was washed in my tears and destroyed by my obedience. The new tree will be born of my bosom, and it will bear the fruit that knows all the evil because it suffered it all in itself, and will give all the good. All men will be able to come to it, and I shall be happy if they take of it, even if they do not remember that it was born of me, providing man is saved and God is loved. Let it be done to his handmaid what is done to a clod of earth on which a tree is planted, a step to ascend. So there, Mary is referring to the tree that will be born of her bosom and will bear fruit that people can come to for life. That tree is Christ crucified. He is the fruit on the tree of the cross, and all that will be born of her. But this is Mary's humility. She says she doesn't mind if she's forgotten about. She says all men will be able to come to it, the tree, and I should be happy if they take of it, even if they do not remember that it was born of me. Now, without wishing to disparage Protestants, but sometimes they're quite close in that way. I've seen at least one Christmas card with Jesus in the crib, Jesus in the manger, no sign of Mary and Joseph in the picture. That is forgetting Mary, but remembering Jesus. And Mary's happy because people are coming to Jesus. So if the Protestants come to Jesus, but they forget about her, she's not complaining. In fact, she says she can be treated like a clod of earth on which the tree is planted. But a clod of earth, of course, is something you can tread on. And I would say, not wishing for Protestants to be offended, but they need to understand, by not exalting Mary sufficiently, when they're not pagans, they should know better. They are treading on Mary. They're treading on Christ's emotions about his mother, and they're treading on Mary herself. She's not going to complain. She's not going to be any accuser of them. She's not an accuser. She's not a judge. She pleads for souls. But we must do better. We shouldn't be like pagans, as if we just came out of a forest worshipping trees, worshipping the river, worshipping stones. Everybody who calls themselves Christian should realise who Mary is. And hopefully, this work, her own words, given on March the 8th, 1944 to Maria Valtorta, will help guide those who are not quite clear about this. And the final thing that the Blessed Virgin says to Maria Valtorta, "And I give you my caresses. Rest now, my dear daughter. The Lord is with you."